What if a simple golden spice, sitting quietly in your kitchen, could gradually influence how your body functions from the inside? Not in a dramatic way, but slowly, at the level of cells, signals, and inflammation. And if that sounds exaggerated, let's walk through the science, step by step. Because today, we're not guessing. We're exploring what actually happens when you take turmeric every day. But before we understand what happens, we need to understand what turmeric actually is inside the body, because the effects don't come from the spice itself, but from one specific compound. Turmeric comes from the root of a plant called Curcumin longa, a member of the ginger family. For centuries, it has been used in traditional medicine systems for its color, flavor, and perceived healing properties. But scientifically, the real interest is not the spice itself. It is what is inside it. Inside turmeric, the key active compound is called curcumin. Curcumin is a biologically active molecule, meaning it can interact with living cells and influence how they behave in the human body. Curcumin does not act like a single target drug. Instead, it interacts with multiple biological pathways at the same time. One of its most studied effects is on inflammation. Inflammation is the body's natural defense response, but when it becomes chronic, it can contribute to many diseases. Curcumin may help regulate inflammatory signals by influencing molecules like cytokines and enzymes involved in the inflammatory process. It is also studied for its role in oxidative stress, which occurs when unstable molecules called free radicals damage cells over time. By interacting with these processes, curcumin may help reduce cellular stress and support normal cell function. Another important area of research is cellular communication. Cells in your body constantly send signals to each other, and curcumin may influence some of these signaling pathways, affecting how cells respond to stress, damage, or inflammation. Because of these multiple actions, curcumin is often described as a multi-target compound, meaning it does not work on just one system, but potentially several at once. Over the years, it has been widely studied in biomedical research for its broad biological effects. However, it is important to remember, most of these effects depend on dose, absorption, and how it is consumed in the body. Now that we understand what turmeric is, the real question becomes what happens when it enters your body consistently over time. Because turmeric is not something that acts instantly, its effects unfold gradually through biological processes that change with continued use. So let's begin from the very first stage, day 1. In the first few days, after you start taking turmeric, you usually won't feel any noticeable change in your body. There is no immediate shift in energy, no instant relief, and no clear physical sensation that tells you something is happening. But inside your body, a very different process is already underway. The active compound in turmeric, curcumin, begins interacting with complex inflammatory signaling pathways. These pathways are part of your body's internal defense system, designed to respond to injury, infection, or stress. When activated appropriately, they are essential for healing. But when they become overactive or persist for too long, they can contribute to chronic low-grade inflammation, which is linked to many long-term health conditions. At this early stage, curcumin appears to influence how these signals are regulated. It interacts with chemical messengers such as cytokines and enzymes involved in the inflammatory cascade. As a result, the activity of certain molecules that promote pain, swelling, and immune activation may begin to decrease gradually. However, these changes are not strong enough yet to produce noticeable effects in your daily experience. Instead, they occur quietly, at a microscopic level, inside cells and tissues, far below conscious perception. Your body is essentially beginning to adjust its internal communication systems, recalibrating how strongly it responds to inflammatory triggers. This is why, in the first few days, many people assume nothing is happening at all. But biologically important, early modulations are already taking place, and these subtle cellular adjustments form the foundation for the changes that may appear later with consistent use over time. And while these internal changes begin quietly, another system starts responding a little more visibly: your digestive system. After several days of consistent use, turmeric may begin to influence your digestive system in a more noticeable way. And like the early cellular changes that happen quietly and without sensation, the digestive system is often where some people first begin to observe subtle effects. One of the key actions of turmeric is its potential effect on bile production in the liver. Bile is a digestive fluid that plays an important role in breaking down dietary fats into smaller particles, making them easier to digest and absorb. When bile flow is supported or slightly enhanced, the efficiency of fat digestion may improve in some individuals. As a result, some people report feeling lighter after meals, with reduced bloating, less heaviness in the stomach, and a more comfortable digestive experience overall. However, it is important to understand that these effects are not guaranteed. The response to turmeric varies significantly between individuals. Factors such as diet composition, gut microbiota, baseline digestive health, and dosage all play a role in how the body responds. For some people, the changes may be noticeable within a few days. For others, there may be little to no perceptible difference at all. This variability is expected because turmeric is not a fast-acting pharmaceutical agent, but rather a biological modulator that interacts gently with multiple systems in the body. So while the digestive system may be one of the first places where effects are reported, the intensity and timing of those effects can differ widely from person to person, and this sets the stage for what happens next, when longer-term biological pathways begin to respond more clearly. But digestion is only part of the picture. As use continues, turmeric begins to influence deeper biological pathways linked to inflammation. By the second week of regular use, you may start to notice more subtle changes. They're still not dramatic, and they don't happen in a sudden way. But inside your body, curcumin may begin to show more noticeable effects on inflammation. At this point, it starts interacting more clearly with key inflammatory pathways that control pain, swelling, and how your tissues respond to stress or irritation. When these pathways are overactive for too long, they can contribute to ongoing discomfort, especially in areas like the joints, where stiffness or mild pain may appear. Curcumin seems to gently influence these processes by helping to reduce some of the signals involved in inflammation. Over time, this may support a more balanced response from your immune system, instead of an overactive one. This is one of the reasons turmeric has been studied in conditions involving chronic inflammation, especially joint-related discomfort. Some studies suggest that curcumin may help reduce inflammatory markers and improve how people feel physically, although results are not the same for everyone because this depends on things like dosage, absorption, and your overall health. So at this stage, it's not a strong or instant effect. It's more like a slow shift in how your body regulates inflammation over time. And as you continue, these small changes may start to connect with other systems in the body, leading to wider effects. And once these pathways are influenced, the effects may begin to extend beyond one system, reaching the heart, the brain, and overall metabolic health. With continued use, turmeric may help reduce something called oxidative stress in the body. Oxidative stress happens when unstable molecules, known as free radicals, build up and start damaging cells. For time, this kind of damage is not sudden, it builds slowly, and over the long term, it has been linked to aging, heart problems, and even decline in brain function. Because of this, researchers have been interested in whether curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, might help support the body in dealing with this process. Some studies suggest that it may help protect cells from oxidative damage and support both heart and brain health through these pathways. However, these effects are still being studied, and they can vary depending on the person, the dose, and how well the body absorbs it. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, is actually poorly absorbed in the human body. What this means is, most of it gets broken down before it ever reaches the bloodstream. So even if you take it regularly, only a small amount may actually become available for your body to use. Because of this, its effects can vary a lot, depending not just on the dose, but also on how it is consumed and absorbed. Interestingly, there are ways to improve this absorption. For example, combining curcumin with black pepper extract, especially a compound called piperini, may significantly increase how much curcumin your body can absorb. This is why formulation and how you take it matters just as much as the turmeric itself, and like any biologically active compound, turmeric is not completely free from side effects. So safety must always be part of the discussion. Turmeric is generally considered safe when it is consumed in normal dietary amounts, such as when used in cooking or as part of everyday meals. In these typical amounts, most people tolerate it very well, and it has been used safely in traditional diets for centuries. However, when turmeric is taken in high-dose supplement form, the situation can be different. At higher concentrations, some individuals may experience digestive discomfort, such as stomach upset, mild nausea, or a feeling of irritation in the gut. These effects are not common for everyone, but they can occur depending on the dose, individual sensitivity, and underlying digestive health. Another important consideration is that turmeric, specifically curcumin, can interact with certain medications. For example, it may affect blood clotting, which means it can interact with blood thinning medications. It may also influence blood sugar levels, so caution is needed for individuals using medications for diabetes management. Because of these possible interactions, turmeric should not be treated as a completely risk-free supplement, especially in concentrated or medicinal doses. This is why moderation is important. And more importantly, medical awareness matters, especially if someone already has a health condition or is taking regular medications. In simple terms, turmeric can be a helpful natural compound, but like any biologically active substance, it should be used responsibly and with awareness of its effects on the body. So when we put everything together, what does the science actually tell us? And this is where the bigger picture becomes important. Most natural compounds don't act like drugs that create instant changes. Instead, they work slowly, influencing balance, signaling, and long-term biological patterns. Turmeric is one example of how nature interacts with human biology in complex ways, but the real key is not relying on one substance. It is understanding how the body works as a system, because once you understand that, you no longer look for miracles, you start looking for mechanisms. Turmeric is not a miracle cure, but it is a biologically active compound that may support multiple systems in the body. Its effects are gradual, moderate, and highly dependent on dose, absorption, and overall lifestyle. If you want more science-based health explanations made simple and clear, subscribe to PharmaconHealth, because understanding your body is the first step toward controlling your health.